had the bag in my hand, warm Euro extra tzatziki just like she liked it. The smell was already seeping through the paper, and I figured she'd be thrilled. Paige had been working non-stop the past couple weeks, crashing late at the studio, skipping meals. So I thought, why not show up and surprise her? Thought I was doing something sweet. I pushed through the front glass door of Doyle & Company's design studio and nodded at the receptionist. She barely looked up. I didn't need to ask where Paige was. I'd been there enough times. Back hallway, second door on the left. The break room. I wasn't expecting to walk in on her sitting on the counter with her legs around Dean's waist. I froze mid-step. She didn't even jump. Just turned and looked at me like I'd interrupted a damn meeting. Dean was kissing her neck like I wasn't even there. I stood there, holding that stupid takeout bag like a clown, trying to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. Dean finally looked up. "You can't be in here, man." He actually had the balls to say that. I took one step forward, Euro bag still in hand, and Paige rolled her eyes. "Seriously, Kyle? You couldn't text first?" I didn't even know what to say. My brain short-circuited. I just worked a night shift, drove across town, skipped sleep to bring her food. And now she's straddling her coworker like I'm the one who screwed up. "You're cheating on me? With him?" I finally got out. Dean laughed. Paige didn't deny it. She just said, "It's complicated." "Okay? Complicated?" I've been paying half her rent for 8 months. She used my Netflix, my Instacart, hell, my old laptop for her freelance projects. I stepped forward again, just trying to process, and Dean shoved me back with one arm. "Back up," he said. "This is private." I tripped on the corner of the rug and hit the ground hard. My elbow cracked against the tile. The Euro spilled. Paige actually laughed. I looked up at her and she smirked like I was pathetic. Like I was the one who owed her an explanation. Then the door creaked behind me. Footsteps. Heels. A pause. I turned my head and saw Valerie Doyle, founder of Doyle & Company, standing in the doorway, flanked by a tall woman from HR and another woman I didn't recognize. That woman? She was holding a file folder and shaking with rage. Dean's smile vanished. Paige went pale. Valerie just blinked once and said, "What the hell is going on here?" Quick note before we continue. Before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? Dean stepped back from Paige like she was on fire. Paige scrambled to fix her blouse. The other woman walked forward and slapped the file down on the break room table. 3 months. "I've got every receipt," she said, voice tight. "We're done." I sat up, arm throbbing, watching the whole scene fall apart. But no one looked at me, not even Paige. Like I wasn't even part of it anymore. Nobody moved for a second. Valerie stood in the doorway like a damn statue, taking in the disaster in front of her. Paige still tugging her blouse closed, Dean smoothing down his hair like that was the problem, and me on the floor, bleeding from the elbow, surrounded by tzatziki and crushed pita. The woman who dropped the folder stepped forward. "Here's your proof," she snapped. "Photos, texts, hotel receipts. That's my husband. That's her." She pointed at Paige. "I want statements. Now." Valerie's voice came low and sharp. "Dean. Now, go wait in my office." Dean opened his mouth, probably to argue, but HR cut him off. "Security's already on their way." Dean looked around like someone might defend him. No one did. He turned toward Paige. "Say something." She didn't. Then building security walked in. 2 guys in polos with badges, no smiles. "Let's go, sir," one said. Dean finally stepped away from Paige. He looked at me like I was the problem. Like I'd blown some secret they thought they were slick enough to keep buried. He muttered something under his breath as he passed, but I didn't catch it. I was too busy watching Paige. She didn't look back at Dean. She didn't look at me either. Just stood there, frozen, holding the edge of the counter like the whole building might collapse. Valerie turned her head to HR. "Put Paige on administrative leave. Effective immediately. I want her badge, credentials, and all company property turned over today." HR nodded. "Understood." Natalie, Dean's wife, sat down in one of the chairs like her legs had finally given out. She looked exhausted, like she'd been carrying this weight for weeks. She didn't look at me, but she reached into her purse and pulled out another envelope. "There's more," she said, voice calmer now. "I copied everything. Your team should check all client records tied to them." Valerie's jaw flexed, but her tone stayed flat. "We will. Thank you." HR crouched down beside me. I hadn't even realized I was still sitting on the floor. My left elbow was bleeding steadily, and I could feel a bruise forming across my back where I'd hit the counter on the way down. "Do you want medical?" she asked. "We can call the emergency response team." I didn't answer. "Sir, you're injured. Do you need assistance?" I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't want to, but because I physically couldn't get my voice to come out. My mouth was dry, my chest was tight, and my throat felt like it was closing. I looked at Paige. She finally looked at me, for maybe half a second, and then looked away just as fast. Like I wasn't worth it. Like I didn't exist. "Call emergency," Valerie said. "Have him evaluated. And start a workplace incident report. I want documentation within the hour." HR stood up and radioed it in. One of the security guys handed me a cold pack from the break room freezer, then crouched to help me up. My arm throbbed when he touched it, but I didn't flinch. "Do you want to press charges?" HR asked again, voice more careful this time. Still nothing. I just kept staring at Paige. She was standing stiff now, arms crossed, watching the tile like it might say something that could save her. "Mr. Ellis?" HR tried again. I looked away from Paige, looked straight at the wall, and shook my head. Not because I meant no, but because I didn't even know what I meant. My brain was fried. My heart was buzzing like it had shorted out. I heard Paige mutter, "This is insane." Under her breath, Valerie spun on her. "No, what's insane," she snapped, "is doing this in my company's building on my time and thinking there wouldn't be consequences. HR, walk her out. Now." The woman from HR motioned and Paige finally moved. No tears, no apologies, just silent, tight movements as she grabbed her purse and walked out behind them. She didn't say one word to me. Natalie stood up and gathered the folder off the table. She paused next to me for a second. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't know you were part of this." I gave her a nod. That's all I could manage. The room emptied out one by one. Security stayed with me until the emergency med team showed up. They patched my elbow and asked me a bunch of questions I barely heard. When they helped me outside to the ambulance, I turned and looked back at that door. It was still open. The same door I'd walked through thinking I was doing something nice. Thought I was surprising someone I loved. Instead, I'd been walked straight into a car crash. The urgent care waiting room smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. A kid was crying somewhere behind the curtain wall, and I could hear an old guy coughing like he was trying to eject a lung. The nurse called my name, glanced at the clipboard, then looked me over with that mix of boredom and judgment I wasn't in the mood for. "So, assaulted at your girlfriend's job?" "Yeah." She raised an eyebrow. "Coworker hit you?" "Something like that." She didn't ask for details, just nodded like I was one of those guys. The ones who walk into drama and expect sympathy. Her eyes lingered on the rip in my sleeve and the dried blood on my arm. "This might sting," she said, unwrapping gauze like I'd asked for pity. Didn't matter. The pain in my elbow was background noise now. I barely felt it. 15 minutes later, I was on an exam table with an ice pack strapped to my ribs and a chemical burn smell in my nose. The nurse left, and I sat there staring at a poster about flu season until the door swung open again. Kelsey. She stood in the doorway in jeans and a hoodie, eyes scanning me up and down before she even said hi. Her mouth pressed into a line. "You're not going back to your place tonight." I didn't argue. She walked in, sat down on the little rolling stool, and leaned forward. "Tell me what happened." I gave her the short version. Paige, Dean, the counter, the push, the humiliation. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she sat back and exhaled hard. "Jesus. Okay. Okay?" I asked. "Yeah. I'm not going to scream and cry about it. That's not going to help you. But we're not letting this slide, Kyle. You got hurt. You got used. And they're not gonna walk away clean. That's what I've always liked about Kelsey. She doesn't break down, she plans. She stood up and pulled out her phone. I'm calling Monica. Who's Monica? My friend from college. She's an employment lawyer. Works assault cases too. I didn't argue with that either. Kelsey stepped into the hallway, made the call, then came back a few minutes later. She wants to talk to you. Now. She handed me the phone. Hey Kyle, Monica said. Her voice clipped and focused. First things first, we need to get ahead of this. You're going to file a police report tonight. You don't wait. Then you're going to contact building management and request a personal copy of any internal footage from today's incident. Time-stamped. Okay. You also preserve every single text, email, calendar invite, receipt, credit card statement, anything you shared with her. I don't care if it's a grocery list. Screenshot it. Back it up. Get it out of your phone and into a locked folder. What if they try to delete? Then we already lost. So we move now. Before we keep going, tell us where you're watching from while you're listening to this. Her voice cut right through my fog. Direct, cold, but not cruel. Were there witnesses? She asked. Valerie Doyle, HR, and Dean's wife. There was a pause. Good. That's rare. It means we're not relying on your word against theirs. Do not contact Paige. Do not reply to anything she sends. Everything goes through me now. Kelsey nodded, arms crossed. You staying at my place, by the way. I already grabbed your meds from your place. Left everything else. I hung up with Monica and handed the phone back. Kelsey stood. Let's go. I followed her out. My ribs ached. My arm was numb, and my head felt like it had been crushed in a vice. But the second I stepped outside and the cold night air hit my face, something shifted. I wasn't crawling away. I was repositioning. Kelsey unlocked her car, climbed in, and looked over at me like I was her little brother and her client now. Tomorrow, she said, we go hunting. The next morning, Kelsey handed me a cup of coffee and said, Monica's sending someone over. Name's Darren. Don't ask him tech questions unless you want a lecture. 30 minutes later, he showed up with a backpack, a tablet, and the kind of dead-eyed focus you only see in people who love spreadsheets more than people. Mid-30s, shaved head, wore a hoodie that said, Trust me, I've been breached. He dropped into the chair across from me and pulled out his laptop. So, he said without looking up, you and Paige had shared digital assets? I blinked. I mean, yeah, Google Drive, Amazon, one joint credit card, and we shared a Dropbox for receipts. Kelsey tossed him a small notebook. That's the login info he still has. Start there. Darren nodded and started typing like he was trying to crack a vault. For the next hour, all I heard was the clacking of keys, the occasional grunt, and one muttered, Jesus, what an amateur. What did you find? I asked finally. He turned his screen toward me. You see that folder? Hidden under archived invoices? I nodded. It's full of reservation confirmations. Hotels. Weekends. Some are under your name, but most are under her work alias. He clicked one open. I recognized the date instantly, late July. She told me she had a back-to-back branding workshop and would be staying overnight at the office. That weekend, I brought her takeout and left it at the front desk because she was too slammed to take a break. She was actually at the goddamn Omni with Dean. Darren kept going. Here's where it gets better or worse depending on how you take it. He clicked over to a bank statement from our emergency savings account. Paige transferred money from this account, your account, to her personal credit card every time one of those weekends happened. Looks like she'd top it off, then pay for the room and extras from her side. Extras. I knew what that meant. Define extras, I said, already regretting it. He opened a list. Lingerie, designer shoes, gift wrapping fees from high-end stores. She really said she never used the joint card? He asked. Repeatedly. Yeah, well, he said, clicking over to our shared Amazon history. She also said she wasn't subscribed to this account, but look at the address on this order, her mom's house. She shipped stuff there a lot. Probably didn't want it arriving at your apartment. He paused and pointed at one line. $200. Silk robe. One day after the hotel stay, I rubbed my face with both hands. That's when Darren sat up straighter. Wait, found something else. He pulled up a Gmail login screen. I backtracked one of the IPs she used while logged into your shared Dropbox. She accessed it from a hidden email address registered under a fake name, Ava K. PR Solutions. He cracked open the inbox. Invoices. All of them billed to real businesses. Mostly small companies. All linked to Doyle and Company as client list. Paige ran a fake PR firm? I asked. She billed people under it, Darren said. Probably fronting her side hustle with Dean. These invoices were generated after hours. All of them line up with calendar entries where she told you she had client follow-up or late-night branding calls. Kelsey leaned in, all while using Kyle's money to pay for it. Darren didn't even blink. Yup. Quick pause. What would you do if someone drained your savings and lied straight to your face? Let us know in the comments. He dropped a thumb drive onto the table. That's everything I pulled. Files, emails, bank records, metadata, timestamps. Keep it offline and locked up. I stared at the little silver drive like it was radioactive. She was building a whole second life, I said quietly. Kelsey crossed her arms. With your money and your trust. I stood up and started pacing. She told me we didn't have enough saved for a trip to Florida. She said I was spending too much on gas getting to work. She was gaslighting you, Kelsey said, and robbing you. I stopped pacing and looked at Darren. How sure are you this stuff links back to her? He didn't even look up from his screen. Signed with her name, sent from her laptop, processed through your shared account, and delivered to her IP. I'd bet my career on it. Monica called that night around 10. Her voice was clipped, no pleasantries. I'm bringing in Reggie. He's a PI I've used before. Former insurance fraud guy. He'll move fast. Good, I said. That's all I could get out. She added, if there's more under the surface, he'll find it. Turned out there was a hell of a lot more. Reggie showed up at Kelsey's the next morning wearing a windbreaker and carrying 2 phones. He had a southern drawl and this deadpan way of talking that made everything he said feel 10 times worse. He got right to it. I ran background on Paige and Dean. On paper, squeaky clean. No lawsuits, no weird debts, no criminal history. He dropped a folder on the kitchen table. But then I started pulling business license records. Look what popped up last year in Nevada. LLC filed under Brand Helix Solutions. Owners listed as Kendall Page Ellis and Dennis J. Warner. Kelsey narrowed her eyes. Dean's middle name is James. Reggie nodded. Bingo. He flipped the page. They registered the business to a virtual address in Reno. But payments were getting routed through a Stripe account linked to an email we traced to Dean's brother, Thomas Warner, in Scottsdale. So Dean's brother is involved? I asked. Only on paper. My guess is they used his ID to open the payment channel. He may not even know. Reggie pulled out a second set of documents. Now here's where it gets fun. These are client payments. 14 transactions from businesses that also appear on Doyle and Company's public portfolio. He pointed to a highlighted line. This guy, CEO of a tech startup based in Austin, paid Brand Helix $5,000 for a rebrand. Same week Doyle billed his company for strategy consultation. You tell me who actually did the work. Kelsey cursed under her breath. They were stealing Doyle's clients. No, Reggie said. They were siphoning them, getting in through Doyle, then convincing them to go off-book for a better price. Paige used her title, Dean used his contacts, and they moved everything through the shell firm. How long was this going on? I asked. He flipped to another chart. At least 9 months, maybe longer. Every month had a list, client name, payment date, dollar amount. Some entries were flagged with notes like, client met through social event, or follow-up scheduled after in-house pitch. It was all timed perfectly. Right after Doyle's initial meetings, Paige and Dean would sweep in. That's when I felt it. This slow, hot wave crawling up the back of my neck. All the lies, the weird late nights, the last-minute branding emergencies. The vague complaints about how Doyle didn't value her. It wasn't just cheating. It was theft. It was fraud. And I'd been funding the damn thing like a loyal idiot. She used my car to get to half of these meetings, I muttered. She said she was picking up props for photo shoots. One time she even asked me to Venmo her gas money. Kelsey's jaw clenched. She used your name, your money, your time. What the hell else did she use? Reggie pulled up a screenshot from his tablet. Here's your Dropbox activity log. Same day she invoiced this client through Brand Helix, she uploaded a deck to Doyle's internal server. Same file, different logo. She recycled Doyle's work? Kelsey said. No, she stole it, he corrected. This wasn't just a side hustle. It was corporate espionage. And the whole time, she kept smiling like she was just tired from work, kissing me like nothing was off, using my Netflix while she drained our savings to play CEO behind someone else's back. Quick check-in. What would you call someone who lies to your face while stealing from your future? Drop your word for them in the comments. I stood up from the table. My hands were shaking. She told me we couldn't afford to adopt a dog, I said. Said we needed to be responsible. Meanwhile, she's out here funneling Doyle's clients to a fake-ass business? Reggie didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He just slid a thumb drive across the table, second one this week. All the data's there. Business filings, email trails, Stripe account logs, IP records, fake addresses, the works. I picked it up. Anything else? He hesitated, then added, yeah, Brand Helix just updated their website 2 weeks ago. Dean posted a blog about creative independence. Paige linked it in a tweet about finally doing things her way. Kelsey crossed her arms. She's not hiding. She's bragging. That was the moment it hit me. The full picture. She didn't just cheat on me. She used me. I was her cover, her roommate, her financial cushion, her backup excuse when something looked shady. I helped her look stable while she built a stolen empire behind closed doors. Reggie leaned back and scratched his jaw. One more thing, those invoices Monica flagged? Their taxable income. None of it got reported. So she committed tax fraud too, Kelsey said. Reggie nodded. And if she dragged Doyle property into any of those invoices, she just opened herself up to a corporate suit. I looked at the pile of evidence in front of me. This wasn't a breakup anymore. This was war. Monica didn't wait a day. She wrote the notice that night. 4 paragraphs, calm and razor sharp. No threats, no demands. Just a clean outline of what we'd uncovered. Stolen funds, client poaching, misuse of company property, unreported income, and 1 recorded assault. She blind copied me on the email to Doyle and Company's legal department. The subject line read, Notice of information regarding internal misconduct, Brand Helix activity plus related events. By noon the next day, we had a reply. HR wanted to schedule a formal statement meeting with me. In person. Their office. Monica asked if I wanted her to come. I said no. This was mine to carry. When I walked into the Doyle building that Friday morning, it was quiet, tense, like the place was holding its breath. A guy from HR met me in the lobby, led me up to the 5th floor where the glass walls turned everything into a fishbowl. I was ushered into a small conference room with 2 chairs, 1 pitcher of water, and a legal pad already waiting on the table. 5 minutes later, Valerie walked in. Same cold focus as before. Not angry, just precise. Like she was measuring the weight of everything I was about to say before I even opened my mouth. She sat, nodded once. Begin when you're ready, she said. I took a breath, pulled out my notes and started. I laid it out in sections, clean like Monica coached me. First, the money. I told them about the joint savings Paige drained to fund trips and pay herself under a fake business. I named dates, amounts, banks. Next, the digital trail. Darren's findings. Hidden email accounts, fake invoices, internal files duplicated and repurposed with brand Helix logos. Then the client siphoning. I listed companies that had paid Doyle for initial branding work and then mysteriously moved off-book. Payments redirected through Stripe to Page and Dean's LLC. Finally, the assault. What happened in the break room? Dean putting his hands on me. Security pulling him off. HR standing right there to see the aftermath. Nobody interrupted. The HR rep scribbled notes. Valerie sat with her hands folded, staring at me like she was watching a puzzle solve itself. When I finished, she didn't move for a second. Then she leaned forward. "Do you have evidence of client diversion?" I didn't speak. I reached into my bag and set a flash drive on the table. Everything's on there. Darren compiled it. Client names, invoice matches, emails, Stripe activity, and time logs cross-referenced with internal meetings. Valerie took the drive, set it in front of her, and just nodded. No thank you. No comments. Just a single nod. Meeting over. She stood and walked out. The HR rep gave me a polite smile. "We'll be in touch." I walked out of that building lighter than I'd felt in weeks. Not because it was done, none of this was over, but because I'd finally stopped being the guy getting blindsided. I wasn't pleading for an apology. I wasn't looking for closure. I was building a case, and they knew it. A week later, I was folding laundry at Kelsey's place when my phone lit up with an unknown number. I let it ring once, then picked up. "Hello, Kyle, this is Valerie Doyle." She didn't waste time. "I'd like to speak with you in person. Today, if possible." I said yes. Of course I said yes. 2 hours later, I was back in the same building, sitting in a different conference room. This one was smaller, quieter. Just me and her. A closed laptop between us and a folder with my name printed on it. Valerie leaned forward, elbows on the table, fingers laced. "I owe you thanks." I didn't respond. I wasn't sure if she meant it or if this was a legal formality. Either way, I kept my mouth shut. "Dean Warner and Paige Ellis were officially terminated as of Monday," she continued. "Their access has been fully revoked. Brand Helix is being pursued through both civil litigation and breach of contract clauses tied to their employment agreements." She paused, watching me, probably to see if I'd gloat. I didn't. She went on. "We've already heard from 3 clients they diverted. One had suspicions. The other 2 filed quiet complaints in the last few months, but nothing actionable until your evidence connected the dots." I nodded once. That was all I had. Valerie opened the folder and slid a short contract across the table. "I have a proposal." I glanced at it. 6 months. Independent contractor. Not staff. Scope of work. Internal access review, cloud security, policy overhaul. She said, "We trusted the wrong people. I'd like your help making sure we don't do it again." I looked at her. "Why me? You know where our blind spots are now. You weren't part of the mess, you exposed it." I sat back. "I'm not looking for revenge. That's why I'm offering it to you." She let that hang in the air a second, then added, "You don't owe us anything. But if you want a clean step forward, this is one. Before we keep going, would you take this job if it meant working where your ex got fired? Let us know in the comments." I didn't ask for time to think. I didn't need it. "I'll do it." She nodded once. "We'll get your access set up by Monday." As I stood, she held out her hand. "This shouldn't have happened to you, but what you did matters." I shook her hand. On the elevator ride down, I didn't feel triumphant. Just steady. I wasn't here to rub it in. I was here to rebuild. By the time my second week on contract started, the first set of charges hit. Monica called me during lunch and said, "Dean's been served. Assault. Workplace misconduct. Breach of contract." She said it plain like she was reading off a grocery list, but I knew what it took to get those charges filed and stick. Witnesses. Documentation. Hours of legal prep. I didn't say much back. Just let her talk. "Civil cases will follow," she added. "But this is the start. We needed the criminal groundwork laid first." I asked, "How'd he react?" Monica let out a dry laugh. "He tried to blame you. Said you baited him." "Of course he did. But the real fun came 3 days later. Reggie called me at night, excited for once. Brand Helix just went dark. Website down, socials wiped, Stripe account frozen. What happened? IRS opened a file. Apparently, Dean's brother had flagged a deposit he couldn't explain, and when the paper trail led back to unclaimed income under a fake LLC, someone inside the system decided to pull the thread. That thread unraveled fast. They froze the business accounts, triggered a federal review, and now Dean was under 2 investigations at once. State for the assault and federal for the money. I should have felt something. Rage. Relief. Vindication. Instead, I just kept working. Monica kept me looped in, but she didn't push me to engage. Said it was better that way. Then Paige emailed me. The subject line, "Can we talk?" It dropped into my inbox like a ghost from a version of life I didn't recognize anymore. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. "Cal, I know you probably hate me, and I don't blame you." Everything exploded so fast, I didn't even get to explain anything. I'm not saying I didn't make mistakes. I know I did. But things between us were already breaking before this happened. I felt unseen, unappreciated. Dean was just someone who listened. Things spiraled. It wasn't supposed to go like this. I never wanted to hurt you. I hope someday you'll be able to forgive me. Maybe we can talk. Even just be friends again. Paige. No apology for stealing. No mention of the money. No acknowledgement of the lies, the fraud, the fake business built with my savings. Just excuses, self-pity, and the strangest offer of friendship I'd ever seen. I didn't reply. I forwarded the whole thing to Monica. She texted back 5 minutes later. Block her. Permanently. That was it. No legal talk. No nuance. Just the truth, clear as it needed to be. I opened my contacts, scrolled to Paige's name, and hit delete. Blocked her number. Blocked her email. Deleted our shared photo albums off my drive. Gone. And I didn't cry. Didn't break. Didn't even get angry. I just sat there at my laptop, sipping cold coffee, staring at my inbox like it had offered me something rotten one last time and I'd finally stopped biting. Quick question. If your ex tried to crawl back after ruining your life, would you read the message or delete it unopened? Drop your answer below. Reggie messaged me that night with one more update. Apparently Paige had reached out to 3 of Doyle's former clients, trying to clear the air before things escalated further. One of them had already forwarded her messages to Valerie. Another blocked her outright. The third? They reported her to their new agency, citing ethical concerns. She was trying to salvage whatever scraps of credibility she had left. But she didn't have anything to stand on anymore. No firm, no partner, no fallback plan. Just a reputation crumbling in real time. And I didn't feel bad. I felt done. I shut my laptop, stood up, and stretched. My ribs still ached sometimes. A little leftover from Dean's shove, but the bruises were gone. What stuck around wasn't pain, it was exhaustion. The kind that sinks into your spine after you carry too much for too long. But even that was fading now. Paige's email was the last loose thread, and I just cut it clean. 3 months later, I was sitting at a scarred-up desk in a co-working space downtown, elbows deep in firewall proposals and access control audits, when my phone buzzed. New contract. Mid-sized retail company out of St. Louis. Referral, Valerie Doyle. I leaned back in my chair and just stared at the screen for a second. Not out of shock, out of something quieter. Something solid. The kind of full-circle moment you don't even try to explain to people who weren't there. My name was on the proposal. My signature on the agreement. My email copied on the kickoff call. No one was dragging me into anything. I built this one from scratch. Our little team, me, Jonas, and Tyler, was stacked in one corner of the shared office. We had 2 whiteboards, 1 busted Keurig, and an actual server tower shoved under the desk that made the whole place buzz like an old refrigerator. Jonas popped his head around the divider. You see this? That St. Louis deal just paid first half up front. Yeah, I said. Saw it 5 minutes ago. He grinned. Not bad for 3 guys who used to fix school Wi-Fi routers for beer money. Tyler clapped his hands once and said, We should celebrate. Wings tonight? I'm in, I said. But Kelsey's coming, so don't act weird. He snorted. She likes me. She just doesn't know it yet. Keep telling yourself that. Just then, the door opened and Kelsey walked in holding 2 coffees and 1 energy drink like she was doing charity work. Wow, she said, looking around. It smells like dust and Red Bull in here. Because it is dust and Red Bull, Jonas said, grabbing his can. She dropped a coffee in front of me and sat on the edge of the desk. So look at you, all grown up, building a business, signing contracts. Feels fake half the time, I said. Kelsey shook her head. Nah, this is what happens when you cut dead weight. You float. She took a sip from her own coffee and looked at the whiteboard, where I'd written client risk tiering in permanent marker by accident. I'm printing you new business cards, she said. They're gonna say harmless no more. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt true. Before we keep going, if someone called you harmless after screwing you over, what would you put on your revenge business card? Drop your answer below. We sat there for a second in quiet. Just the hum of computers and the clack of keys from a guy 2 desks down. I opened my email again, checked the folder of finalized contracts, and saw my name typed in clean Helvetica across every doc. Not buried, not attached to someone else's work, just mine. I thought about that break room, about walking through that door with a damn sandwich in my hand, thinking I was doing something kind. I thought about the push, the laughter, the look on Paige's face when she saw me on the floor. But now it felt distant, not numb, not erased, just far away, like watching someone else's mistake. Like the memory belonged to a version of me I didn't know anything to anymore. You good? Kelsey asked. I looked at her. Yeah, I think I am. She slid off the desk, grabbed her bag, and nodded toward the door. Don't stay here all night, boss man. The world already knows you work hard. Noted. She left, and I sat back down. No lies, no blurred lines, no one using me to build something behind my back. This business, it was mine, and I wasn't harmless anymore. The letter came in a thick envelope with a Doyle and Company watermark on the corner. No email, no subject line, just my name on the front in neat, printed type. Inside was a formal commendation, dated, signed, stamped with their legal seal. I read through the first paragraph, the usual HR-approved language. Integrity, cooperation, timely disclosure. But the last line hit different. When something looks wrong, open the door. I read it twice, and then I looked at the door in front of me. Real wood, heavy, dark stain, solid handle. My door, not a cubicle divider, not some borrowed desk in a shared space. My office. The team and I had signed the lease last week. Corner suite on the 3rd floor of a converted bank building. Still smelled like fresh paint and carpet glue. Outside the frosted glass window, I could see downtown stretching into a hot gray sky. I set the letter down on the desk and walked over to the door. That phrase looped in my head. Open the door. The one I opened with a stupid sandwich in my hand, thinking I was doing something kind. That door blew a hole through the life I thought I was living. Ripped it wide open. But here's the thing I didn't see at the time. That door didn't just end something. It started something else. Because walking through it, getting pushed down, laughed at, betrayed, forced me to stop playing the quiet, steady, dependable guy everyone could take advantage of. I stopped ignoring the signs. I stopped letting people walk all over me just because I thought love meant patience or loyalty or giving second chances. I stopped confusing silence with strength. Before we wrap, what's one door you opened that changed your life, for better or worse? Let us know in the comments. I turned the lock, not to keep people out, but to make sure I chose who got in. I stood there for a second, hand on the knob, thinking about how far I'd come, from bleeding on a break room floor to this. This wasn't some revenge fantasy or glow-up speech. It was just mine. This space, this life, this confidence, none of it was borrowed. I was standing alone, but not lonely, and definitely not harmless.